I think it was Harare conversations before COVID. Now after COVID, it's it looks like Zimbabwe conversations. We've got from everywhere, I guess, because we're connected to everywhere all at once at the same time, which is great. So today I've got the honor and privilege to host Harare conversations with my esteemed guests. We've got Charmaine Chitate, Mkhululi Tobela, and Tatenda Macheka. I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves as we make ready to get into this conversation, which comes on the back of the exhibition being hosted by the National Art Gallery of Zimbabwe in Harare at the moment, and online, Aftershock, Reimagining Life After Cyclone Idai. So I'll ask Tatenda, just introduce yourself initially, and everybody else to come on as Tatenda finishes his introduction.
Okay. Thanks so much, Ekstani, and hi to everyone. My name is Tatenda Macheka. I'm a communication assistant with the United Nations World Food Program. And I think just to point out that we were one of the first responders to be in Chimanimani, Chipinge, and Buhera when Cyclone Idai started. We usually say we are the first people to arrive and the last to leave. So basically, we are still there. Thank you.
Fantastic. Kululi, if you could introduce yourself.
Oh, cool.
We're going to save the best for last. I mean,
I understand. All right. So, yep, my name is Mkhululi Tobela Sibanda. So I'm a freelance photojournalist and also I'm into doing documentaries. I've been doing work. Usually I practice between Bulawayo and Johannesburg. That's where I practice my work. As I said, I'm a freelance journalist. I file for anyone that wants my work. So yep. So I've worked on when we're talking about issues of climate change. I've worked on a project with IFAS Johannesburg in Braamfontein, where we were focusing on the integration of waste pickers, or now we call them reclaimers, into a formal working industry in South Africa.
Great. And last but not least, Charmaine.
All right, my name is Charmaine Chitate. I am a communications consultant and also photojournalist and artist. I'm currently an artist in residence funded by Africalia.
Yeah, welcome to everyone. So my name is Jekesai Njikizana. I'm a freelance photojournalist based here in Harare. And I'm just honored to have been part of Aftershock, Reimagining Life After Cyclone Idai. I was a co-curator with Raphael Chikukwa, who is the curator of the whole exhibition by the National Art Gallery. And obviously that came after the devastation of the cyclone and a need to put together a body of work to archive the events of the cyclone, before the cyclone, after, during the cyclone, after the cyclone. And, you know, clearly it's an issue of climate change. And as part of the Harare Conference, I would like to highlight the work of photography around issues of climate change and how we can highlight, you know, action planning through photography, issues of climate change. So I think first up, we'll have part of this discussion, Tatenda Macheka giving his presentation. Tatenda, as he is already, is from the World Food Programme, and they're the first responders among perhaps civil protection unit and even local communities. So Tatenda, if you are ready, you could go ahead with your presentation, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, just can you just allow me to share my screen?
Yeah, sure. I think Zico is on that.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Can I? I'm still trying.
Yes, please. Tatenda, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Are you guys seeing anything so far?
Not yet.
Not just yet, but
saying host disabled participant screen share, so I think I need rights to share my screen.
we'll quickly ask Zico to make sure that you can share your screen. And Valerie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, you can. Oh gosh. All right.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just doing that just now. How do I share?
Okay, so I think because art is obviously going to be limited, why don't we have Mkhululi start with his presentation as we make sure that we are ready for Tatenda.
Okay. So in the response to this discussion about the role of photography in climate action planning, I feel us as photographers, it's very, very important that we begin to take up that initiative and instigate that's change, especially speaking in Zimbabwe. I don't want to talk about South Africa because they got the ball running, but I'm talking about us as here in Zimbabwe. We really need to start getting the ball running other than just being called photographers, but we need to show what photographers supposed to do, what are photojournalists supposed to do. Are we really telling the stories about climate change? Are we instigating? Are we able to tell people what exactly is happening? Are we able to measure progress about climate change? So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that as we instigate, as we measure damage or achievements, at the same time, we provoke public decision making, as well as also policy makers, like for instance, the political sphere needs to understand that they need to participate in the climate change planning. They need to include those things. Even in the budget, you find that when the budget is being read, those things are not there. So us as photographers, we need to come in and participate in making sure that those things are had. So at the end of the day, we cannot blame anyone else, but us as photographers, we need to instigate that and produce work. However, photography is not science, but it produces evidence of the damage or of success that has been done. Take for instance, I know photographers that participated in the Idai. They did quite a lot they did quite a good job, and the world was able to see what was happening. So that's what we need to do: instigate things that can bring change into Zimbabwe pertaining climate change.
Excellent. Thanks, Mkhululi. Is Tatenda ready for us at all yet? Are you ready for Tatenda, Valerie?
Okay, guys. I don't know how to share screen. Please don't mind me. Don't mind my backward.
So Valerie, click
Yes.
on Tatenda's on his name under the list of
Yes.
participants.
Okay.
Then make him co-host.
Hold on. Okay. Tatenda. Yes, and then make him co-host.
Yeah, that way he will be able to share his presentation.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, great. I think we're on our way now.
Okay, just a second, guys. Sorting that out.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So are you guys
Sorted.
seeing my?
Well done, Val.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so you guys are seeing my presentation, right?
Yes, we can see it now.
All right. So I think like what have been like said by the previous speaker, there's a lot that the photography can do on climate change. I'll speak maybe on behalf of WFP and my personal experience on what I saw during the cyclone, and also the the importance of photography. So maybe the first question is maybe why do we photography? Why are we choosing photography maybe as a medium? I think the most important thing is photography is that power to freeze time. Photography can say 1,000 words. You know, there's no that language barrier when you're showing off pictures. You can just throw a picture and it can tell 1,000 words. So we are coming in here with a very powerful tool. So it's not like we can't use photography, or it's something that is similar to other mediums. The good thing now is the beauty of it is now everyone can be a citizen journalist and can use the phone and everything. So photography becomes a very useful tool when combating climate change. So the other thing is the lens becomes the eye for the world. Climate change was said to be a myth in Zimbabwe, but you know, when Cyclone Idai hit, it hit close to home, and people started to think, okay, we've read this in the newspaper, we've read about COP15, we've read about such and such a thing, but now look, there's a cyclone just in Chimanimani and Chipinge, and people started to say, okay, so these are the effects. It can actually destroy limbs, lives, and property. So all this is to be captured by the camera. So it is really important, especially to the United Nations. I'm glad Sirak is part of this discussion, and you can always jump in when I'm presenting. So these are some of the images that we captured in Mwenezi. This is the other part of climate change. We really need to change the world one picture at a time. You know, there are a lot of pictures and things that have been captured, and they've made people to get out and act. Maybe I can give an example of what we've been seeing of George Floyd. You know, it was just captured by a camera, and you know, a lot of people had to go out of their homes and start to talk about it. So if we can do that, if we can have a hashtag on climate change, like on what we did on Floyd, why can we not push this? Why can we not do it? You know, climate change is destroyed a lot of lives, and maybe we're just keeping quiet and we're not talking much about it because we are thinking that it is affecting those nations that are in Europe and not here in Zimbabwe. So I think you guys as photographers, we have a big role to play. We really need to keep on pushing. You know, the other thing that I wanted to say is with photography, it creates those emotions, you know, like this picture. This guy we took in, I think this is Rushinga, where we are doing small grains. We are also pushing communities to start to grow drought-tolerant crops, because you've heard of your El Nino as well. So we are saying people should not keep on growing maize and maize and maize. So we captured this guy. His name is called Jemrai in Menez. He's blind, but he's a farmer. And you know, after taking this picture and a quote, he actually told me that you are lucky that you are not blind. Today is a beautiful day and I cannot see. you know, this was so touching. And when we when we published this story, you know, we had a lot of people, including donors, coming to say we want to support this small grains program. But now this is how powerful the camera that you're holding in your hand can be. You can move mountains. People can come and say, okay, we want to help these people through this. So it's just an example on how powerful these can be. But the thing is, we are racing against time. We don't have much time as we think we have. According to another UN report I was reading, they are saying that the consequences of climate change will be irreversible by 2030. It looks like it's a very small time, but if you think it's now about 9 years. So we really need to push. The other thing is, you know, with pictures, you can compare before and after, like what I've done in the presentation. That's a dam in Chimanimani, a place called Zamunda. It was destroyed by the cyclone, but after we have fixed it, you can see it. It's almost back as it is. So we are also saying you guys should, if you think you would contact us to say we want to go and see some of this project, you're free, maybe just to piggyback and say, if you want to go, we can always go, and you can also always see what we are doing, you know. I think we need to be...
That's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I also think we need to be proactive than reactive. You see, this is one of the choppers we're using in Mani in Chipinge to carry food and aid, medicine. But guys, if we had used this money to not to hire a helicopter, maybe, and put it in advocacy and photography and say, okay, we're given 400,000 by EU, can we not put it into the media? Can we not push some of our colleagues, you guys, the photographers, to warn people, to show people the devastating effects of climate change, rather than to say, okay, this is a helicopter, we are here with the helicopter to save people, to carry those people who have been injured. I think we need to be proactive. We need to be ahead. Like what we are doing, we are trying to be ahead of COVID-19. We are trying to be ahead of the curve. Even climate change, why can we not be ahead of things, telling people the situation on the ground? I think we can save much and more lives than what we did. And then these are some of the images that we captured in Chimanimani and in Ngangu. Some of the stories we couldn't say them or publish them because of ethics and stuff, but basically just some of the things that we did. Now the future of maybe photography, I think in this situation that we are in, I think we have a bigger opportunity than before, because people are not, maybe because of the restrictions, our movements are limited. But I'm saying, if we have the camera, if you guys could go out there and tell the real story, I think this is a good opportunity. Photography is, I think it is a future more than ever. We really want to depend on these images. You know, there's an old adage that say, tell me a story and I forget, but show me a picture, I will always remember. So we are looking at these things. This is the future. I think photography is the future. Maybe before I knock off, WFP has got different activities that we are doing. I'm sure most of you know we are giving food aid in close to 60 districts, all the rural districts in Zimbabwe. But this is also because of climate change. We are also into school feeding. We are drilling boreholes to make sure that water is always available for the school kids. We have an insurance to say maybe if there is drought, the smallholder farmers can always go and benefit from that insurance. We've got a whole lot of activities. I can go on and on, but I'm happy to say we have this platform, and I'm sure we can always exchange contacts if you guys need anything and help, because WFP is the largest humanitarian organization and we have got a wide footprint. So Jakisani, I'm sure this is my last slide. They say if you cannot say it in 10 slides, don't. Thank you so much.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Tatenda. Amazing imagery right there. You're not only a good communicator, but obviously a very able photographer. Well done. Thank you for those images and your presentation. Listen, we'll re-engage with your presentation after we've had a listen to Charmaine Chitate's presentation as well. And then we really have a full-on conversation with everyone. So Charmaine, if you're ready for your part of the presentation. And just to remind everybody that the discussion really today on Harare Conversations is the role of photography in climate action planning. You know, as part of our discussion and activations after the launch of an exhibition by the National Art Gallery of Zimbabwe to archive, you know, images from Cyclone Idai. So, Charmaine, if you're ready, we can have your contribution, please.
Sure. I don't have a presentation to share, but I think I'll just speak. It's very difficult to talk about climate change without talking about disaster. Disaster and climate change have us on the back foot as photographers and also as Zimbabweans. We have so much documentation on the disaster, on Tokwe Mkosi, on Cyclone Idai, on the drought, but we don't have narration, visual narration of how did we get to that disaster. And when we're looking at an environment now where Chipinge, Chimanimani are working towards building back, we don't have a visual of what are we building back to. We don't have a visual of that. We only have the narrations of community members within those regions saying this, you know, there was a house over here, there was this, but we don't have visual representation of that. Now, I agree with Kululi in that we need to be proactive in, you know, documenting these changes. But it's not just on us, but it has to be a generational process. So we're documenting, you know, environment stories now. We're also documenting its impact on people, on communities now. But we're not going to be the photographers that are there 10 years from now or in 2030. So there needs to be that facilitation. But however, we have also been on the back foot in terms of when we are engaged. Photography to many organizations, even governments, has been activated as an end-line process, as opposed to being involved in the planning process of the climate action planning. So we need to be involved earlier. Yes, we want to be proactive, but if we're to realistically do it, and this is where I differ with you, Nkululi, is that in the Zimbabwean environment, I cannot just go out to Binga and start taking pictures. I need facilitation, and that facilitation can only come from organizations that are active within that region. I'll give an example of some work that I did last year, end of last year. This was documenting the impact of, you know, the drought in Binga, to see, you know, to what extent it has affected the communities there and what solutions are there. And, you know, a lot of the work that we do as photographers in Zimbabwe right now, we are not afforded the time that we need to spend with people to get the truth of the story. As Zimbabweans already, we are trained to say what is needed to be said, not to exactly say how we feel, how it's affecting us, but because, you know, sorry, I'll use you, Tatenda, if WFP wants me to say I'm running out of food, then I'll say I'm running out of food. But we're not given that time to spend in the field to say, this is what it realistically requires us to be. I need to be at this home village for the next 5 days, spending time with these families, because the moments that we need to catch are within those 5 days, not in the 30 minutes that the budget requires us to do. So in talking about the budget, I will then come down to one of the slides that you shared. And also a point that you raised, Atenda, in that there's a lot of citizen journalism, which is a great thing, in that it allows a lot of people to tell stories and different stories, which is what we need. However, there's also the need for quality representation of the situation at hand. So I'll give an example of the two shot that you shared of the carcass of a dead cow, right? The image on the left is more immersive, it's more involving, it pulls me into it. right? As opposed to the image on the right where I'm like, okay, there's a dead cow, right? But you know, where I have the person, the citizen journalists don't necessarily have that background that we have as professional photographers. And I feel like a lot of the documentation that's there, which is how we've managed to not document pre-disaster, because the stories that are there are just, let's just talk about what we've done. Let's show what we've done. But we need that journey. People right now need to understand the journey in order to, you know, to internalize climate change. In order to want to be involved in climate change planning, they need to understand it. And the best way to understand it is not to talk about it from I guess, a topical view, for lack of a better phrasing, but to bring it down to a grassroots level to say, what is the most basic way in which people are contributing to the effects of climate change? What is the long run effect? Let's also talk about the failed processes as well, to say, okay, this person in this area tried doing it like this was wrong. And for them to be able to tell their stories themselves, as opposed to narrating it, we need to allow them to say, okay, you know, to take the journey with them, you know, to develop photo stories, not just one image. At times, a body of works is what will help tell the story. So if we're going through the entire, like, if we're looking at agriculture, if we're going through the entire season, to say this is where we're starting with, you know, getting, you know, proceeds in, here's when we're planting, okay, you know what, the rains didn't come on time, this is the impact. We finally got some sort of irrigation process coming in, here's how it has been set up. And this is the impact of what the irrigation system has done. This is the kind of crop that we then, that our farm then yielded. That process, I feel, is more engaging as opposed to just having a success picture. I feel it's more like motivational speakers where they say, you will be great, but then you don't have that journey to say, you might fail sometimes and you might need to pick yourself at other times. Yeah, I think that's everything for now.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Charmaine. And I'm just going to ask Sirak. Sirak, are you ready with anything to contribute to the forum at all at the moment? Yeah.
Thank you, I have nothing to add. I'm just getting the experience of my colleagues. Thank you, Sharp. Very inspiring. I really like the stuff you mentioned about what we want to tell instead of you know, expecting others to make us tell the story they want us to tell. That's a good point. You know, we are trying to on how communities, not necessarily engage them from our perspective, but tell their stories. And we've been in touch with this community publishers of community publishing. What this institution does is just gives a team to given community. And they come up with the topics and issues they want to highlight, and they write their own stories. And if we could give some session on using gadgets and camera, I'm sure they would capture pictures, speak volumes, as Tatenda said. A picture tells 1,000 words, as it has said. So I think we need to invest in if we are going to make a real difference, as it was said, in educating each other. We need to ensure that communities are empowered to tell their stories, highlight their concerns. And that way, you know, even journalists do tell the stories that their editorial policy to write. But how possible is it to mobilize communities to tell their stories? That way, whenever there is an issue, instead of politicians going there after 5 years to get their votes, it would be a constant loop in terms of informing their decision makers, politicians, whenever there is a concern, whenever there is an issue, whenever there is a gap, they have that constant look at their decision makers, whether it's in the capital, or whether it's at councillor level. So I fully agree, Charmaine, with you that communities need to be empowered to tell their stories, not necessarily only through camera and still any mode of communication. As we talk about climate action, they need to, because they are the first to be hit. As Tatenda has mentioned, WFP is leading in 18 districts on resilience of community asset building. The same applies to UNDP is as well implementing another resilience building in 18 similar districts, even though they have different nuanced approach. But these are 18 districts that were identified drought prone or natural disaster prone, or they are prone to external shocks. So the model they are implementing is based on a national framework on resilience building. Of course, there was a national assessment, and then these 18 districts were prone to disaster. But how effective are the communities involved in the solution for their problems? This is an area that we can explore together.
Yeah, thanks, Zirak. You know, what I imagined was, I think, because climate change is not fast news. It's not hard news. It's not like something is happening in town. Let's go and check it out. Climate change is really gradual, seasonal. It takes time. So I think the long story format of telling climate change is what's required. It takes identifying what the story is initially, and the patience, obviously, to live through that story over seasons, and we're talking months, we're talking years. And naturally, being journalists, we're driven to follow the story, but communities actually live in the season, live from year to year in the same spot, and they're probably better placed to take better photographs of, because we only come in when the cows are dead. We don't appreciate when the cows are full and they're healthy, and we do not notice the deterioration over time. They really only come in at the end. We don't realize the streams when they're running out, the streams when they're full, siltation, those kind of things. So I think there's a place for almost holding each other's hand, because we're not necessarily climate change specialists, and there are people that are. So I think there's a place for meeting together and being able to move forward as a team, really representing what climate change is.
I think there is
looks
a background.
like, first of all, we're planning how to affect the situations when climate is changing. How do we tell that story, and what do we say that can affect the plans that people have? Like, for instance, Tatenda was talking about small grains. So it's probably after 3 seasons of realization that, okay, maize, for instance, is not working. What does small grains look like? In some areas in this country, there are places where you cannot grow small grains until you've spoken to the chief, the local traditional leaders, and so on and so forth. What do small grains look like? Those are presentations that can be done through photography to say, we're from this part of the country, this is what small grains look like. They don't affect this, they don't affect that necessarily. I don't know, I'm rambling on a little bit if anyone has got something to say, but that's what I think is that the way to tell the story is not a quick burst. It's a long story format.
I think if I could just step in just for, I think also for, maybe we also need to look at climate change, not just how it affects the rural Zimbabwe, but also how the city is affecting rural Zimbabwe. When people are migrating from the rural areas, from other cities, coming into Harare, Bulawayo, Masvingo, the bigger cities, are cities able to contain that kind of population growth? And are we preparing towards accommodating that kind of population growth? Visually, how does the accommodation situation in Zimbabwe in accommodating all of these people that are migrating to Harare, how does it look? Does every person have their own house? Does it have proper water and sanitation services? Does it have electricity, or are we getting alternatives? Because I feel like even when we look at how we're now buying solar panels, it's only because we can't access electricity from our electricity provider, but it's not because we want to be efficient in how we use certain aspects of the environment. Is because we can't access it this way, that we're now using it that way. Same thing, when we look at littering, are we getting into the household and conscientizing people visually to say, okay, maybe if you have a bin, even just working with a test area, we take pictures and say, okay, if we separate our refuse in such a way, this is what it'll take to work towards a better future, to decrease the number of dumping sites. The more dumping sites we have, and I think we also need, in visual representation, we also get to show how we're impacting other budgets, not just the climate change budget. We're impacting finance, we're impacting health, by creating these situations where there's refuse dumping, and we've got images of that. We now show how, just lack of water sanitation because a certain area is overpopulated now is leading to a cholera outbreak. And this is now impacting on, response from the Minister of Health in trying to get resources there. So I think in order to create interest from other aspects of business in terms of climate change is, to show visually how it's impacting their respective budgets. And that's something, I guess, that we may be falling short on in terms of how we document climate change within the city and around the country.
Just to also to add on to that, I feel like what Charmaine spoke about, especially when it comes to things like limitations, budget, and things like funding. I feel that we need to start, us as Zimbabweans or Zimbabwe, we need to do that ourselves, other than waiting for someone to come and tell us that, well, if you farm like this, obviously at the end of the day or in the years to come, you're going to create a lot of problems, which will eventually affect your community. But I think us or maybe let's have opinion leaders like as we're having this discussion here, opinion leaders that we look up to, like the Art Gallery of Zimbabwe. Let's have the Ministry of Arts and Culture participating in these discussions, participating in these activities, so that we are able to fund ourselves or fund the people that are able to bring out this message. Let's not wait for the Chimani disaster to happen so that we start seeing that, oh, well, we have to start acting, we have to start doing this. I like what Jekesai also said. Let's go and tell stories when good things are happening. I also like what Tatenda gave us, the before and the after. Let's continue having those things brought into visibility, other than talking about things or bringing in the ministry when something has already happened, when disaster has taken place. Probably those are some of the things that us as photographers, yes, as photojournalists, we're not scientists, but as you are able to tell through an image that and produce this work it can show even to someone who is a scientist that in the few years to come, this disaster can happen. So those are some of the things that we as photographers, we need to play that role. I know there's problems of funding, there's problems of budget, but I think it's about time that we start initiating those things ourselves. Currently, I'm doing a project in Matopo here. There's a lady, she's participating in climate change, but she doesn't know that she's doing something which brings out change in her community. She picks up mopane seeds, and then she makes outfits out of them. And also she makes outfits out of maize cobs, out of even pumpkin seeds. Then she doesn't throw things away. Those are things that recycling is part of the solution of towards climate change. So let's make sure those are the little things that we need to show and have mini exhibitions. It doesn't have to be a big exhibition. We can print something on bond paper and have a mini exhibition, even outside our city councils or outside our community halls, and be able to show that these are the things that we need to do as communities. It really sometimes doesn't have to be a big budget, but like you were talking about arming communities. Communities, simply knowledge is good enough to as a capacity building enhancement. Knowledge is quite very important. So let's bring out that knowledge as photographers through visuals, through storytelling. And I feel those are some of the things that can help us other than waiting for a disaster to take place.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mkulu. Just to jump in to what Charmaine and Kululi had said, you know, it's not every day that we get such an informative discussion, and I'm actually happy to also hear from you guys, and I'm also happy that Sirak is online and is also taking some few notes on what we really need to do. Maybe if you look even in our SDGs, the whole of the 17 SDGs, you'll find that there is something underlying in climate change. All of them will finally lead to climate change. I'm also happy to say we also have an initiative that we are starting called Storytellers, where we'll be trying to honor our beneficiaries and the people we serve, to say maybe there is a smartphone, can you do this and do that? I'm really taking notes on how we should start with them from the beginning, not just to wait maybe for something like Cyclone Idai and stuff. So I really appreciate that you guys are bringing in this. You know, one other thing that I've noticed also, forgive me, but there's this tendency to say maybe our photographers are an afterthought after I said, okay, let me find maybe someone who writes, someone who does television, and then Jackie-san will say, no, Tatena, you can't be going with these colleagues without me. Then you jump in, and then, so I really think we should keep in touch and just telling each other to say, we're doing this and that and that. Like Mkululi was saying that you are doing a documentary. I think we'll always try find time. I have someone who was looking for something like that, and who also wanted to publish and fund something like that. So I think we can as well discuss maybe after this to say, this lady, can we try and publish and do much? Thank you.
Thanks, Tatenda. Yeah, when Charmaine was speaking, she mentioned energy, and energy really is at the coalface of climate change, particularly here in Zimbabwe when you consider Kariba and how we've got a hydroelectric power plant in the country. And it's almost when we are faced with the shortage of energy, that's when we begin to think, where does our energy come from? And then we say Kariba is at 15%. Let's go and take pictures of 15%. But if someone was to ask me for pictures at 60%, at 70%, at 110%, I won't have those images, because my realization of climate change is only post-disaster. And then the trouble is not only at Kariba, isn't it? It's upstream. So I need to find out, where does my water for Kariba come from? It comes straight up from the Zambezi and all the way to, I think, Namibia, Botswana, perhaps Angola, Zambia. I can imagine a story being told of that catchment area regards climate change, and then eventually how it affects downstream in Kariba, eventually Harare. So images of the upstream to Kariba would be absolutely important in helping planning the climate change issues. How do we represent upstream? How do we represent, for instance, I mean, we've had the big story with Victoria Falls running dry as it happened. But I mean, that story was really told in pictures, wasn't it? And it's a world story because it's a seventh wonder, isn't it? And listen, everybody's scrambling to get pictures of Vic Falls
dry.
And it's really our responsibility and our job really to tell that story. I mean, this is why this particular panel, we've really tried to say, okay, I actually had tried to get someone from Vic Falls, someone from Mutare, someone from Bulawayo, someone from Harare, and all over the place, because climate change is not centralized. It's not like government. Climate change is everywhere. Everybody's free to share in climate change. We're all facing the trouble of climate change. And Tatenda, you mentioned training communities. The first images I saw of Cyclone Idai that were alarming and alerted me to the fact that this is, personally, I didn't know what a cyclone was, what it does, what it looks like, what its effects are. The first images I saw were of images on cell phones by people who stay in Chimanimani, who were in the middle of the disaster before anybody was airlifted to go in and be a first responder. So that is an amazing opportunity you have identified in training local communities to tell the story as it happens, before anybody else can come in, and so I commend you for that one. That's something that is we would be willing to support, even ourselves as professional photographers, to say, how do you train those communities to better be able to take photographs, videos, and where to share them as well, because once you've taken the imagery, where do you put it? Where those images are housed, and so on and so forth. So yeah, amazing, good stuff, man. Anybody else got something else to say?
Okay.
Yeah. Valerie. Yeah, okay.
Okay, sure. Valerie, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. First of all, guys, I just want to commend you on the great work that you're doing. And thank you for this opportunity, Jekesai. I would like to reiterate what Charmaine was talking about. We need that journey. Okay. We work at the National Gallery of Zimbabwe, and we have artists talking about what's happening in society and around the world and stuff like that. So I would also like to say, please don't forget to include galleries as well. We also want to be part of that. Like the Mets department will say there will be a cyclone, but people are not really understanding what's going on. But I don't know how these organizations can actually come in and say, okay, guys, this is what's about to happen. Can you come and capture this and stuff like that? So I'm just speaking on behalf of the artists and galleries. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. Yeah, I mean, we're really appreciative of the National Art Gallery on account of hosting an amazing exhibition, to archive and document the events around Cyclone Idai. That also, sort of highlights something else, because we're talking about photography. Where do pictures go? Traditionally, we've had maybe newspapers, but social media, technology is developing. Where do pictures go? Does anybody want to contribute along those lines? Because I think pictures go further now. Pictures linger longer now. That was a mouthful. but I think the understanding of where and how far images go actually inform you of the importance of your work, because your work can inform the most remote communities nowadays because of technology, isn't it?
I think it comes to, in looking at what Valerie said, the national galleries are our expression point. So like you said, climate change is not hard news. So there's no news agency that's looking for pictures of, Zimbabwe having a drought as much as a riot in Harare. They're not interested in that. And also the way that we would want to document certain aspects of climate change may not be what the news agencies want. We might want, like, with Mkhululi's project, he's looking at the solutions perspective. Most news agencies are not looking for solutions, they're looking for problems. So if you're not presenting a problem, then they're not going to buy it. So national art galleries, the galleries allow us to show our perspective of what is happening. And if we were to reimagine the exhibition, if it was a physical exhibition, so imagine you have in the lower hall of the gallery, if you have, starting on the left, you have pictures of Chipinge, Bikita, Chimanimani, before the cyclone. And as you're going, you're seeing the disintegration as you end up on the right, you then end up with the completely disintegrated community. But you started on how it is, we can only do that at a gallery or in a photo story showing the long journey. So galleries allow us to put together, to present bodies of work. Whereas, when we pitch stories to news agencies, they're only allowing us to make one point, one perspective at one point, at one time.
Yeah.
Also, just to add on to that, sorry, Jekisai, I just also want to say to galleries also, may you guys also please be accessible. Make it easy for me to access the gallery as an artist, as a photographer. There shouldn't be too much red tape for me to come and say, hey guys, I've got this work. Can we work together so that I can get this work exhibited, and so that we can also have a panel discussion. May also galleries not make it difficult for us to come and see you and talk to you. Can you make it easy so that we access the gallery, so that we can be able to use the art gallery as a place so that we can be able to bring out the work? And also may the Arts Ministry of Arts and Arts Council also be part of this, because we cannot always be having European Union coming to fund us. We can't be having NGOs coming to fund our work when we can actually do it ourselves. So may we have access, please?
Yeah. Just to add on to the issue of access, but looking towards development agencies, I'll give an example of some development agencies working in the health section. So they have what they call media field trips. I've never worked with WFP, so I don't know if you have those, where you just say, okay, we have a bus, we are going to this area. If you're interested, let us know, and you can get onto that bus and you pursue the stories that you want, or you can let us know in advance what it is what facilitation you want. Because truth be told, in Zimbabwe, you cannot go and document in public spaces or the villages without facilitation. It's not possible. If you try it, obviously, my experience is that you then have issues with the chiefs, you have issues with local government, you've got issues with the government itself. So if you really want to be stress-free and to actually be able to focus on the story itself, it is easier to do it with facilitation. So if there are opportunities like that, I think those will go a long way towards, facilitating that. So for example, like what Jekesai was saying, being a part of the training process for, the communities involved, to say, okay, here's the starting point. We're starting to do this. We're training them. We're there. And they're saying, okay, I want to be able to take pictures of this. I want to be able to take pictures of that. Because as photographers, we're different. So what we take pictures of is different. The way Jekesai takes a picture of a person is different from the way that I take the same picture. I'll take at a different angle because my story is different. So we need to be able to, to find some way of, having a facilitatory relationship where we have access to the people that you're working with. You have media field trips that we can be on to, and we can say, okay, you know what, please let me know. I'm looking for this kind of story, that kind of story. When we're having a field trip to, let's say, Binga, Matland, anywhere, Mashingo, let us know so that we can also then put together whatever story ideas that we have. We are lying to each other if we say that we can afford to put funds together and do this. In this current environment, it's not possible. Even if I were to save, it's still not possible because there are things that, that I need to cater for, accommodation that needs to be paid for. If I go and live with the family that I'm documenting, that's going to have a financial impact on them. It's going to impact their food. It's going to impact a whole lot of things. So we need to make those considerations that we don't end up being burdens on our story interest as well. So it's a double-edged sword. Yes, we need to have independent stories. That's how I would see it, without being paid. Yes, we need to have independent stories, but we need, in Zimbabwe, you have to be facilitated, unless you know the person personally. But then now you're now telling the stories that you know, not the stories that are there. So we need to also then get to a stage where we broaden up and we get cozy with the different environments that we're in to tell stories. Hopefully I don't blab a lot.
Thanks, Charmaine.
Thanks so much, Charmaine, for that. We have traveled with different colleagues, but I'm realizing that we haven't. Jekisan is one of them, but I'm also realizing that we've never traveled with a female photographer, and it's one of our main mandate to travel with people like you. So now I'm giving this task to Jegesani to maybe create a small database for us. Maybe we can, maybe a small, we can start small and then we'll develop as we go. Like what I said, we are starting a storytellers program very soon. So I think it would be good for a very few maybe guys like the guys on this platform to find a way forward how we'll develop it. Clay, my boss, was also here, but I'm sure she has left. She has another meeting, but she's the one who told me that she's interested. Maybe if we guys can come up with something that we can always do.
Yeah.
So Charmaine, let me assure you that in our next trip, anyway we are going, you are the first one on the list. Jekisan, just please make sure we have all those contacts, and I'll make sure that we can organize.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, that's one great outcome of the conversation. That's good. So just to go off again on another tangent, sorry. What I wondered was, so we're talking about climate action planning. So when we take the photographs, do they go before the people that actually plan any of the activities around climate change? I was actually just imagining now, because when there's a response, there's obviously NGOs. Just to cite the example of Chimanimani and Cyclone Idai, there was the response of the army. The army was there, active, very responsive. Civil protection unit. Now, once we've done those images that we do when we're there, do any of those images find their way back to the army, back to the civil protection unit, back to NGOs? The reason I say or bring this up is, for instance, if I've taken an image of a bridge, I've taken an image of a field of crop, completely destroyed. I've taken images of homes and homelessness. Those really are the ones that perhaps incite a response and help in planning, because then if the bridge that went this way, for whatever reason, maybe whoever needs to make a plan now, because of the imagery, knows that the bridge should go another way. Poor example, I know, but this is what I'm bringing in to say, once we've done the imagery, how do we get it before the people that make plans? Ministry of Agriculture make plans for small grains in certain areas. How do we get our images before people who make plans around climate change?
I think if I could just add on to what you just said, Chikisai, sorry. It's also using an example where, we live in a very diverse community where we're living with people with disabilities as well. So in what we're doing as building back better, right? What is better? Is it we're building better to what we were, or are we becoming more inclusive and fixing the problems that we had in the previous system? Because it is also a new, in taking pictures of, let's say, the impact of Cyclone Idai and how the communities were built, were set up. As we're building back and we're taking pictures of the processes in, construction of new buildings, accommodation, houses, schools, all of that. Are we then making sure that the environments that we're taking pictures of that are being constructed, like what you're saying, that the bridge should be facing the other way, not the other one way? Are we making sure that can we say to the city planners or to the town planners that the way that they're undertaking construction now is inclusive, and if disaster should come again, the environment that they have, we're lucky that, I guess lucky is a bad word to say, that Cyclone Idai happened at night when people were, at home. If kids were at school and the toilets that they have, would they been able to get out of the toilets, get to safety? Is that something that could have happened? Do we have a visual of such structures? And can the city planners realistically say, this is a safe structure, this is, we're preparing for future disasters? Or are we only showing what we're dealing with now without thinking of future disasters?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think I'll try and answer from the development agency's perspective. Most of the pictures, we always see them, and I'm sure they always help in making sure that there is action. I remember there was a time we went to Mwenezi with Aaron Ofmeli, and he took some pictures of some kids who were eating. It was kind of disturbing, but I remember the country director had to say, no, we need to send this to Rome so that they can as well see what's happening and trying to source funding. One thing that I've also realized, maybe from the UN side, those pictures of the young kids and the nutrition, they really do well in making sure that the donors are active and making sure they respond faster. But like what Jekisane said, the first images that we received from Chimanimani were of untrained people, like those people who were on the ground, that we used them even in our first reports to say, look, this is what is happening on the ground. But also maybe like if we travel together, if you want your pictures to be put in our report, you can just send us and say, please use this. If you think this is useful, can you please use it? We can as well use it and inform you that, no, we actually used your picture in our report that we sent to so and so. It's actually useful, and we actually need those pictures, because like myself, I'm not a professional photographer. I'm only lucky that I'll be the person who is around, yes, holding the camera. So I would really want to see more of your pictures. Just make sure you send them to us. We'll push them, especially our home office in Italy. They're always supporting and they are in need of those pictures.
Yeah, great. Yeah, Tatenda is just downplaying his skills there. I don't know what he's playing. He takes amazing pictures, man. Well done. I don't know if we've got any further contributions. I'd like to think we have.
I would just like, in short, to say also the hashtags, they help. Let's say you posting something about climate change, hashtag climate change, hashtag culture, hashtag, climate change. Those are some of the things that that help as people look into those things. They actually assist for those images to be able to be seen faster from a freelance perspective. It really works for me.
Yeah, trust the young one to bring up hashtags. Very useful.
I think just as a sort of closing thing is a point that you raised, Jekesai, was the role of the chiefs when you want to plant new seed and all of that. I think it's important to not just think of climate change in the context of climate change, but also climate change in the context of African culture, Zimbabwean culture. Some of the presentations on climate change might not present itself the way that we want it to, but it might present itself when you have a discussion on culture. So, which is also kind of where the art gallery needs to come in, because Mukululi's presentation is on an artistic presentation. The recycling process, how it's used, is presenting itself as art. So I think there's a need to have a conversation, probably with the gallery, on that to have an understanding of how climate change and maybe solutions to climate change or the effects of climate change are presenting themselves or can be presented through art as well. And through arts and culture. Because also remember, in Mozambique, there was a World Heritage Site that was affected. In Zimbabwe, that's a possibility. You talked about the Victoria Falls, the seventh wonder of the world. It's quite broad, but I think there needs to be more conversation on how it presents itself, and photography also being an art form as well. It would be great to do that.
Yeah, I did a few pictures at the Great Zimbabwe, and so when I was there, we were obviously having conversations with the curators of the National Monument there, and it came up in the conversation when Idai happened. They had fears of the big tree that's almost growing out of the I don't know, it's not Acropolis, growing out of the middle of that monument.
Yeah.
In the instance that the winds and the level of the cyclone was strong by the time it reached Great Zimbabwe, you could have had an instance of that tree falling over and destroying parts of the monument, as it were. So climate change, vis-a-vis culture, and our history, everything really, nothing is being left out, is it? Because once you think about it actually affects a lot of things, and that monument could have been destroyed because nobody would have been prepared to in the planning process of what the cyclone is coming, what do we need to do? Because that's really what we're talking about, isn't it? Climate change planning. When climate change is headed our way, and not necessarily in the form of a cyclone, but in the various forms that climate change takes, are we ready for it? How do we plan for it? So yeah, I think that's super important, what photographers can do and contribute in and amongst everybody else's contribution. Yeah. I think we're just going to really have closing remarks now from each one of our panelists to just close the Harare conversations that got contributions from all over the place. Kulili, you're gonna go first.
I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to be able to talk about issues that if we do not really talk about now, they're affecting the future. Our children will blame us if we do not fix this now. And people, like as I said in the beginning, that we need to instigate the change. We need to arm people. We need to measure, because that's what photography does. That's what this planning is all about. We measure our success. We count damage that already is taking place. And also let's not react to issues as storytellers. Let's tell the stories as they take place, other than just reacting when Victoria Falls runs dry, and then we start reacting and start photographing Victoria Falls. Let's start working in our communities. I like working in rural areas, working around the cities also. That's where you are able to measure the damage that has been done. There's also help our people understand that when you cut down a tree, you're not going to have rain in the next coming years. Those are little things that we need to do as photographers. You're telling that through a story, and let's also have opinion leaders taking part in these activities. It's going to help us a lot, and in terms of funding, in terms of having that plan being initiated, because we cannot do anything without policymakers. We cannot do anything without the public taking place in the action planning. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mkululi. Your contribution just now has triggered something in my mind, really, to say, when you talked about cutting down trees and our kids in the future blaming us, our grandchildren, and so on and so forth. As photographers, there's seed. You could almost take pictures of seed, isn't it, and say, this is what a Mopani seed looks like, because we don't actually know if in 100 years' time, because of climate change,
probably,
whether we'll have Mopani seeds available for anybody to look at. And when they do see them, if they become available, will they be able to identify them? So we're looking at botany, we're looking at zoology, we're looking at flora and fauna. Are we taking enough pictures of our animals? Are we taking enough pictures of plants? Are we taking enough pictures? It sounds, trivial, or it sounds like it's been done before. Perhaps it hasn't. So those are thought points to consider and to look at. Are we documenting what our environment looks like in this current climate that we have, so that when climate actually changes, we might be able to identify what we had and how to restore it in 1,000 years' time from now, because we've documented it, isn't it? So I think that's something to ponder and think about. Tatenda, if you could have a go and close.
Okay. Wow. Thank you so much, guys, for this. Maybe just to say, you are the biggest eyewitnesses, and you really need to capture this. Climate change is affecting everyone, like what Mkoleli was saying. Even our kids will be affected in the next generation. So yes, WFP's mandate is zero hunger, but I've realized we cannot do this alone. It's everyone, hands on deck. We need to make sure that we combat climate change while least we can before it is too late. So I'm happy we've exchanged ideas, but now the ball is also in my court to keep on engaging you as we move forward. Maybe taking the current situation into context. Maybe you guys are at a certain area that would need pictures. So I would want us to keep in touch. I'm sure Jikisan will reach out to me on the way forward on what we are going to do. But I appreciate that you guys invited me on this platform, and I'm sure we can combat climate change. Thanks.
Thanks, Tatenda. And Charmaine, last but not least.
I think we need to be, as photographers, we need to be in a position where we start taking pictures of, like what I said, what is there now before we lose it. And as we work with different organizations, I think it would be grand if we had future conversations on, you know, time frames on how best to get the right story, and also allowing the individuals within the communities to continue telling their stories. We are storytelling people. We tell different stories, but how we project it, we need to make sure that we always get the authentic stories, not just the chorus that everyone, you know, is singing. So yes, there's a drought, but is there any solution that is being activated within the drought itself? We need those individual authentic stories as opposed to just the chorus. Yes, we have a drought, we still document that. But yeah, I think that's everything for me. You know, it's a hand-holding conversation that we have to continuously have. And as we document, it's not, I might be the one who's documenting this year. Mukululi can be documenting the next year. We've got 10 photographers through to 2030. And we should be able to match different photos and see the progress of, you know, climate change with regards to Zimbabwe, and be able to show how it has impacted Zimbabwe.
And Valerie, some remarks?
Okay. I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, like I said before, let's all let's carry on. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. I'd like to thank all our panelists, Kululi, Tenda, Shemaine. Thank you very much for affording us your time and your contributions, your insights and your experience. Really much appreciated. We'd like to just thank the National Art Gallery again for, you know, handing us this platform to have a conversation, to speak to issues that really affect a nation, all of us as a nation, really. So yeah, thank you very much. And I think, you know, that's it. Anyone who wants to go and look at the conversation, you can go onto YouTube and have a look at the conversation as it has been recorded. And there's the online version of the exhibition currently hosted by the Art Gallery. So thank you very much, guys, and have a good weekend, really. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.